Yep, we're all on.
All
That's
right,
Kristen.
hold on. Good afternoon,
Our
everyone, and welcome to the YWCA's fourth community discussion regarding racial and social justice. As always, we're really excited for our speaker, and I think we're going to, again, cover some really important topics. As we've done before, you'll see the question and answer section at the bottom of your screen. You can ask questions throughout the presentation or throughout the discussion. And then once G and our speaker are finished with their part of the discussion, we'll kind of open it up for those questions to be answered. As always, we want to make sure that we are respecting each other and our speakers. Although we do want you to ask, whatever questions you have. And yeah, so we're going to get started. On that note, I will pass it over to the YWCA's Executive Director, Guillaume Stewart.
Thank you, Jess. Welcome again to everyone. We're excited to be having this conversation. We're excited to have Matt, our district attorney, as a part of this conversation. Matt, it's super important that you're here in light of the George Floyd tragedy, the murder of George Floyd that the whole country responded to. And I know it's something that you've responded to, and we've talked about that, how it's impacted you and the work that you do. And we're super excited that you're a part of this conversation. I told my coworkers today, I said, when me and Matt get on the interview, we're gonna go hard in the paint. We're gonna ask Matt the tough questions, right, Matt? We're gonna go in and ask the tough questions because you made it clear to us that you want to be a part of this solution. You want to be a part of the conversation, and we're grateful to have you. So I'm going to get right into our questions. Can we just tell our listeners, Matt, the people that are watching and viewing and hearing us, how did you become interested in law, and what's it like to be the district attorney of Bucks County?
So that's two great questions, G. The first one, I think, is more of a historical question, and I have, unfortunately, I have a story to tell. I'll try to keep it brief. I usually can really expand on this, but when I was a young man, G made a reference. Some of you might not know what it means to go hard in the paint. And I myself, I love basketball, always have. And growing up, I played, not very well, but always tried, and was fortunate to make my high school basketball team. William Tennant, go Panthers,
Right.
And I was really looking forward to a great senior year. And prior to the season started, senior year had just started. It was maybe the second weekend in September. And this is a date, how could anybody ever forget? But it was Friday, September the 13th. And my friends and I, there was pre-cell phones, but we knew of a party. The parents weren't going to be home. It was a friend of ours was hosting a party, and we all decided to go. For some reason, I have it in my mind, I had to go visit my uncle's house. So I couldn't go with my friends, but I was going to catch up with them. And surely I did. And by the time I got there, my friends were all drinking. A lot of them were drunk. And one thing leads to another, and a glass menagerie falls and crashes to the floor and shatters. And that was like an alarm bell went off. Everybody scatters to the four winds, including my friends. And I knew the girl that was hosting the party, so I offered to stay back and help clean up a little bit. And I grabbed one of my friends who had come with this big group in one car, a big Chevy Blazer. I said, hey, why don't you stay back with me and we'll catch up with them so I could have some company. He said, fine, help clean up, get on the road. And I was in South Warminster going to Southampton. We're going to meet up at the McDonald's in Southampton. Drive down Street Road, down Davisville Hill, and I see flashing lights, red and blue. Divert around that, go to the McDonald's. And the next thing I know, 3 people from the party come in and they're crying. And they said it was a terrible accident. People from the party were in the accident. And your heart goes into your stomach immediately. And that's what I felt. And I grabbed my buddy. We got into my car and I rode as close as I could up 2nd Street Pike to Street Road. Couldn't go any further. I told him, wait here. He had been drinking. I'm I'll admit I would have, but I didn't have a chance because the party was over so quickly. And I ran up Street Road towards my old elementary school, Shellmeyer. And once I got there, all I saw were ambulances, police, and bloody sheets all over the. And as it turns out, these were 4 of my friends who lost their lives that day. One of my other friends was driving, and this was in 1985. It is seared into my memory. And just having to process that, being a pallbearer at age 16 or 17 and trying to think about my life's trajectory, I can't say that I immediately said, oh my gosh, I'm going to go into law enforcement as a result of that. But it definitely affected the trajectory of my life. And I think life is full of, we make choices all the time, some small, some huge, some ordering. And I know, number one, I survived there, but for the grace of God, went I. And it confirmed for me that I wanted to do something positive with my life. I wanted to be of service, and I did. And I never veered from that, really, G. That was, I think, one of those seminal moments where you're at a crossroads. You can go this way or this way.
Yeah.
I went this way, and I'm still here 27 years later. So to speak to your second question, what I want to make sure I answer. What was it? What is it like?
Yeah.
District.
What is it? Yeah. Yep.
It is for me, and I know I run the risk of sounding corny, but I believe these words. It's a calling for me. These 2 words that go together: public service. Public service. I wake up and I go to sleep thinking about that every day. Am I fulfilling my mission to the people in Bucks County? I have a beautiful view. I wish y'all could see it, but I look out there and I say, these are the people that I have to protect and I have to serve every day. I think that leadership starts at the top. You have to be of the community that you serve. I grew up in Southampton. I live in Doylestown now. I think it's very important to be accessible, practice what you preach. I make sure all of the young ADAs, and we have about 42 of us here, ADAs, a staff of about 100 plus, to make sure that they understand that what I'm telling them to do are things that I've either done already myself or I'm willing to still do. Every now and then, this old horse gets into court. But I think it's important to lead from the front and to be accessible. So I'm just as engaged now as I was 27 years ago when I started in 1993, right out of law school. Worn a lot of different hats, and I've been in a couple different locations, Lehigh County, Cape May County, and now back to Bucks County, which is my home. And I will say this: if anybody out there has a question about whether we're fulfilling our mission or if we let you down, you got to come talk to me. Email mdweintraub@buckscounty.org. There you go. That goes right to me. I answer them all individually because each of us should be accountable to the people that we serve.
Yeah, Matt, I think that's really powerful. And I know in our conversations, you always talked about the importance of seeing leadership as an opportunity to serve. You kept talking about public service and serving the community and being accessible to the community. And you've certainly been accessible to us at the YW and many nonprofits in our community. And we're super excited about that. The other thing that I think that was really powerful about what you shared is that as a younger person, you saw an opportunity from a tragedy to serve, to say, how can I serve the community? How can I help people? And we work with young people all day, every day, trying to get them to understand that they have so much value and that they can make an impact. Over the last couple of weeks, we've all been home, working from home, and because of COVID-19, of course, and a lot of us during our staff meeting, we'll do an activity and say, everyone named something that they've been watching on Netflix or on, Investigation ID or something like that as an icebreaker. A lot of us watched The Lost Boys of Bucks County, a documentary that I thought was really powerful. We, of course, sent our condolences to the families of the loved ones that were lost, the young men. But Matt, you were right in the heart of that investigation. We saw you there. I was sitting on my couch watching. I said, oh my gosh, there's Matt, on the documentary. And just wanted to know, what was that experience like as a leader, as the top law enforcement officer during that time?
So a lot of people are very curious about that, G, and I can't blame them. It was a very intense week.
Yeah.
And I think that having lived it, I didn't get the same perspective as everybody else who was watching it unfold on television. But I need to always remind myself and remind people that I really was only in office. I had not even been elected yet. I was only appointed by the judges a couple months prior to that. And there is no school, no practice, no training that could ever prepare you for a crisis like that. So, number one, I was surrounded by an incredible team, supported by an incredible team. What you saw from me, I was essentially the mouthpiece, the conduit to the public, because as I've said before, I think communication is so important, even when it meant that I had to say, I know the answer, but I can't tell you. And I said that many times. People were appreciative of that. We had those 4 families, Mark's family, Dean, Jimmy, Tom, families were keeping a round-the-clock vigil that entire week. And that was an extraordinary pressure, because until we knew otherwise, I remember saying this, we have to hang on to hope until there's no room left for it. And we tried earnestly in vain to bring those boys home alive, but a chapter in the book had already been written. The pressure, extraordinary. I know you all wouldn't recall, but I do. The heat was like it is now, except it reached 100, triple digits. And then out of nowhere in the middle of the week, torrential downpour. It was like biblical. And we just persevered. The team, there was about 200 law enforcement personnel on this farm, this 90-acre farm. And some of them were working on establishing the suspect. Some of them were working on trying to find the boys. And some of them were working on retrieving the evidence. And we, of course, as I'm sure most people know, we were able to find the boys. They were dead, but we found them. And that became our priority when you go from rescue to recovery, unfortunately, and we were able to bring them home to their families. And that, of all the things that I could accomplish that week, that was what was most important to me. But you talk about that community connection, G. I think that in retrospect, upon reflection, and I did watch I didn't participate, but I watched the Discovery ID. How could I not? I watched it. It was surreal to watch because I had lived it. But the key to me, and the thing that people appreciated the most, and this was affirming to me, was just try to be open and honest when you can, to provide information as much as you can. What really was reaffirmed to me was just be yourself. You got this. You can't be anybody else. You'd be an imposter. And so I tried to stay true to who I was. There were some terribly emotional days, some tough times where I'd be surrounded by the cameras or surrounded by the families whose loved ones were missing. And I just tried to really stay true to my heart.
Yeah. And I think that obviously that tragic experience, I think the community needed a voice of leadership. They needed to be able to look at the law enforcement community and know that they would step in and step up. And I think that your leadership came through in that moment for a lot of people in the community. And I think another important project that you were a part of is the Walking While Black project, which is really exciting. Can you tell us why you were interested in that, and why did you want to bring that to Bucks County? I know that Bucks County was the first county to have this program in that form. So that speaks volumes. Why was that important to you?
So to give a little bit of a preview, Walking While Black, Love is the Answer is the name of a film and a much larger program for which the film is the centerpiece. It's a film that was produced, written, directed. It's a documentary by A.J. Ali, who's from the West Coast. And if you live or work in Bucks County, you know that Bucks County really is a series of interlocking neighborhoods, communities, and public service, whether it's the YWCA, foundations, nonprofits, the district attorney. We all know each other. We all talk, and that's wonderful. It's what makes Bucks County, which is huge, such a tight-knit community. So I was approached by the Peace Center, Barbara Simmons, who's the former executive director of the Peace Center. She's now retired, but still very much involved. And she said to me, and I'm, you know what? I'm grateful that she felt comfortable enough to approach me with this project. And she said, we just watched this film and participated in this project in Yeadon, Pennsylvania, which is in Delaware County. We watched this film with the police and the community. And then afterwards, we all got together and we discussed how the film made us feel. And I will tell you, and I've probably seen this film now 10 times. It is very difficult to watch. It really creates a lot of raw emotion, whether you're a member of the public or a member of law enforcement, but it's designed to do that. Interestingly, just to talk about timing, then I'll talk about the film a little more. So Barbara approached me at the very beginning of the year. So to give you some context, this is in January. COVID didn't hit until, call it March. Yeah. George Floyd was murdered in May, I think May 25th, and all the civil unrest occurred after that. So here I am, top law enforcement officer in Bucks County, being approached by the Peace Center to get the money together to purchase this film, which if you watch it, is very difficult to watch from a law enforcement perspective. And I had to do a real gut check and say, how will this be perceived by law enforcement? Can I overcome their initial distress and defensiveness, and is it worth it? And I thought it was. So we scrounged up the money to get the film, and to give credit where it's due, Fred Herron, who's the director of public safety in Salem, I partner with him all the time. The Bucks County Chiefs of Police Association backed the film, which was of huge support to our efforts. And Parks Casino actually gave us the money to purchase the film, the rights. So we can show it I can show it anywhere to anyone at any time, as long as it's in Bucks County, and we could do it virtually too. And we started showing it. Talk about Kismet, the first time that we showed the film, and gee, I think you were there, was during the MLK Day of Reflection. I think it was a Saturday or a Sunday, MLK weekend in January, to about 400 people, including kids, high school students from all over Bucks County, Montco. I think Kristen might have even been there too.
Yeah, she was.
And then we broke into these groups, and I had to get all the police volunteers, which was, I was so proud of them that we had about 30 police volunteers to do this. Broke into the groups, and it was transformative. Because after you watch this film, which is very difficult to watch and to process, then you break into the groups. And you're naturally going to be defensive, whether you've had a bad experience with cops or you're telling the cops you've had a bad experience, and then they're defensive. But I watched those defenses break down. And it was all over. We all had pizza together, of course. And I watched and I interviewed people, and I said, what did you think? It was a very rewarding experience. So we showed it down in Bensalem. We showed it at Del Val University up in Quakertown, and then COVID hit. and George Floyd got murdered, and then civil unrest. And now, of course, we're still in COVID, but many, many people want to view the film. So what seems obvious now, G, that we should all be watching this film and having this discussion, not then.
Right.
Very glad at least some positive will come out of all this civil unrest if we can just continue our momentum and continue the dialogue.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that film was very powerful, and you referenced the discussions afterwards. So we split up, into various rooms. They broke us into groups, and one police officer in my group, I think his son attended the high school, and we had a chance just to talk as people, just the dialogue, to hear about his work. I could tell him about the stuff we do at the YW, and that was really instrumental, I think, for me as a person of color, to be sitting next to a police officer and building a relationship with him in this context. So I think the film was really powerful because it helped a lot of people to talk to one another in a way that we ordinarily wouldn't have. So I think we tend to get too compartmentalized, especially in the politicized climate that we're in. But at the end of the day, a cop is a person. Yeah.
People that he may be stopping or arresting, they're just people. We're all just people. So to the point, if we can just take our uniforms off and just talk as people, and maybe this is the centerpiece that we need, the conversation piece, much better off. We have so much more work to do. Don't get me wrong, but this is the step in the right direction. Yeah,
I agree with that 100%. I'm seeing that you probably see we have a ton of questions from our viewers, and we're going to get to those. But I just wanted to ask you this question that the committee came up with, which I think is an important question. If a police officer commits a crime that is perceived to be racially charged in Bucks County, what is the investigation process, and how do we determine whether or not to file charges against this police officer?
A great question. And frankly, the public's confidence depends on the answer. So it's a two-parter. Number one, like it or not, police officers commit crimes. They're people. Sworn to protect and serve us, but they have weaknesses. We have and will continue to prosecute police officers that commit crimes. So how it usually works, and I'm talking in general, then we could talk about the racial component. In general, how it works is if an officer is suspected or accused of a crime, that should be reported to the district attorney's office, not to that local department. I will say for the most part, the local departments, they can be trusted, but it's just not good practice to have them investigate their own, so to speak. So we would then receive that information and we conduct a neutral investigation. Sometimes we charge the cop, sometimes we don't. But we've charged a few since I've been the DA. That's not something that I relish, but it needs to be done. That's what we signed up for. So let's talk about the racial component of things. So if I understand the question, and I want to make sure that I get the subtlety of it, a police officer could behave inappropriately as it pertains to race, and it still not be a crime, but would be wrong and could be a fireable offense. If that occurs, the first thing they should do is contact that department, just so it's on record. Okay. The thing they should do is contact us. And if they feel, and that's the district attorney's office, and you can make, if you wish, an anonymous report of any type, but of this type certainly, at bucksda.org. That would be anonymous. It's our Crime Watch page, and there's a way that you can make it anonymous, or you can go on record and we would contact you. If you are not satisfied with that, you can contact the Attorney General's office, because I understand some people may say, well, look, these guys are all in bed together. Why should we trust Weintraub more than the local guy? And I appreciate that. So I'm offering you some alternatives. But now if we take it to the next level, if somebody commits a cop commits a crime and it's racially motivated, we're taking them all the way. We're going to prosecute it, and we will hold them accountable for the crime and for the racial motivation behind it.
hmm Okay, I think that's important for our listeners to understand that your office, your staff, you know, the team that you're leading, there is a process to report concerns. You want to hear from the public if they experience these racially motivated situations, and there's a process to deal with those police officers that may participate in that. And I think that's important. Another question that we wanted to ask you is, can you share with us how the work of your office, Matt, how it translates into local police departments all across our county? How does that translate?
You're going to hear the same theme that we've been discussing, and that is leading by example. So we have 39 police departments. The biggest one is Bensalem. We have a couple that only have one officer, so they run the gamut. What I try to do is put out policies that could be consistently adhered to, whether you're that largest department or the tiniest department, so we have some uniformity.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about leading by example. We have a listserv, an email listserv that we contact all 900 of our police officers throughout the county. And sometimes I do that, but more often what we'll do is we'll contact their chiefs. And we are pretty fortunate. We're very fortunate here in Bucks County. The example I've already given you, where those police chiefs endorsed the Walking While Black Love is the Answer program, that's a big step for law enforcement. They meet regularly once a month, and I go to the meetings, and then we have a lot of email and telephone contact, but where we talk about critical issues. And at each and every one of those meetings, I get up there and I say, all right, this is what we need to focus on today, tomorrow, and the next day from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But I will also give them credit. They are a very strong organization. And to give you yet another post-George Floyd example, they have decided, of course, with my agreement, to work on a universal use of force policy for the entire Bucks County police use of force. That doesn't exist right now, and it is not required, but they've heard the will of the people, and they consider that to be a priority, and we're going to produce that so that people know exactly what they're getting all the way from Bensalem all the way to Quakertown.
Mm-hmm. That's great, Matt. And I'm going to sneak one more question in before we get to our listeners that have a lot of questions, because I think this is important too. We never want to see, of course, a situation like George Floyd again. You know, we want to work on the various levels to create change and to build better relationships between people of color and law enforcement. And that's where this next question comes from. How can we build stronger community partnerships between law enforcement and communities of color? How does that process work? What can we do to help facilitate that?
So I have a kind of a technical answer, and then I have a very practical answer. My technical answer is that I do think law enforcement is over militarized, and that's a product of some programs where law enforcement can get former military equipment that was used by the military for use for the police. I think that the police need to do more community policing, get out of the cars, get to know the communities that they serve. So shift that spectrum from militarization, staying in the car, to back to community policing, walking a beat, getting to know the people that you serve. I think that will go a long way. But to talk about how is that effectuated? Well, if the police know that there's this perception issue, I talk to them all the time, and believe me, these guys and these men and women, they don't want to be viewed as the enemy by the public. They have to answer the call. So I think that it comes down to organizations like the YWCA. You got those gaps for us. You help us by being those foundational partners to give us a locale, to create a venue like this where law enforcement, me, can talk directly to the public to try to break those barriers, to try to lower those barriers. And we are working, to give you another example, and I use this Walking While Black, Love is the Answer vehicle in many of my examples, but we have on August the 10th, we're going to try to do this live at Lower Bucks campus of Bucks County Community College, presentation of Walking While Black. I think it's at 6 p.m. It's only going to be limited to the first 60 or 100 because of spacing, but the cops will be there, and people of color or people that are interested in this issue want to show up. It's free of charge.
Right.
That's how we do this. We got to get people re-engaged and reconnected, and we count on our partners like you help us bridge those gaps.
Yeah, man. I remember when we talked, you talked about this concept of standing in the breach.
Yes.
And I thought that was really
That's
powerful.
it.
Can you talk? Can you expound on that a little more for our listeners? Because I think that that's so important for creating the change we want to see.
So it takes brave people. It is not without risk, and we have so many community organizations, church groups, youth organizations that want to help, and they're asking me, say, how can we help? And the way that you can help, stand in the breach, to promote programming like this, to put on programming like this, to offer these conduits for people of color or people that are interested in these issues, to combine with the police or people that may have the opposite viewpoint. Because I believe, and I've seen it, that when we do all get together and just have these conversations, the barriers come down, those misperceptions come down. And when I talk to the police, the way that I explain it is this. I'll say, this is a tough conversation to have. I say to them, listen, you may not be overtly racist, but you understand, as a police officer, you're dealing with the YouTube generation. And the YouTube generation right now, what they're seeing is a repeat reel of cops doing bad things to people of color.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're seeing. Now, those aren't made up. They're just constant on at our fingertips on social media. We need to defuse that. We need to de-escalate that. And the last thing that we want or need is for somebody, whether it's a person of color or not, to have their hands so tight on that steering wheel when they get pulled over, they're going to escalate the tension accidentally with a police officer. Now, I'm not victim blaming. Don't get me wrong, G. But I also don't want the cops to be tense because the person in the car is tense. And the way that that works is if we become more familiarized with each other. And I'm counting on partners like the YWCA to stand in the breach, to fill that gap.
Yeah, I think that's important. And I think there's so many people of goodwill, whether it's nonprofits, churches, synagogues, religious communities all around that want to do this work, that want to break down those barriers, that want to build positive community relationships with law enforcement and people of color. And I think that's important work that we have to do. I want to just check in with Jess because I know we had a lot of questions. I see them popping up. You see that, man? So I want to get to some of these questions. I'm going to put my questions on pause, but just turn it over to Jess so you can answer some questions from her, Matt.
Sure.
All right, cool. So first I want to just say for all the attendees, I know someone was asking how to access the Lost Boys of Bucks County. So someone else actually sent a link, which I believe may be the way to watch it. So I'm going to send that in the chat right now. It looks like it's a link for investigation discovery. So I think that would be how you can watch that. I also have tried, there's a lot of questions and I've tried to kind of group. There's a couple that are, along the same topic line. So I've tried to group them together. So bear with me in trying to make sure we don't have repeat questions. So I'll start with our first question comes from Olivia. She says, thank you for running this. Given the expansion of prison populations in the county due to the unsuccessful rate of probation and parole completion as a result of strict requirements, what are your proposed solutions to reduce recidivism and especially for nonviolent offenses?
Great question, Olivia. A couple of answers for you. First one is more diversion. At the root of a lot of probation and parole violation is substance use disorder. And I think that we need to get, if we can get these people into treatment quicker, we can eliminate the need certainly to lock them up and incarcerate them. That is something that we are actively working on. Of course, we have diversion for first-time offenders, but we also need to reach these hardcore drug offenders that really are the most at risk and the ones that need the most treatment. And we are working on a pilot program right now. We already have our drug court, which is very rigorous, but we are working on our pilot program right now. It's only going to be in one district court. It hasn't started yet, but it will in a couple weeks, for repeat hardcore drug use offenders to be diverted out of the system. And the focus, the goal is going to be on treatment. I do believe that you should just not punish somebody for punishment's sake. All of these people are going to return back to society at some point, and we all have a vested interest in them doing well and being successful. So that's number one on the pretrial end. When it comes to incarcerating them while they're awaiting their probation hearings, I think that's too long. I do think that people needlessly wait too long pending their hearing dates. I'm not passing the buck, but that is a function of court administration, not law enforcement. Yes, that they get locked up either by their probation officer or the police, but then they have to wait until they get their hearing. And to give you a good case in point, and then I have one more meaningful thing to talk about this. During COVID, so our jail population started about 800. And because of COVID, we worked very hard, the district attorney, the courts, the defense attorneys, probation, to reduce that jail population. And we got it down to about 500, which because of necessity. But what it shows you is it can be done. Now we'll see if putting all these people back out on the street had any repercussions, but I'm interested to see that it works out. And then finally, on probation and parole reform, what I think we should do, and we're working on this as well, is to have earned good time credit. So you may get a sentence of 2 years probation, but if you can prove that you're a good probationer and you do everything correctly for that first year, you're done. And that's something that we're trying to start uniformly. So those are just some of my thoughts, and we're turning those thoughts into action. Great question, Olivia.
Awesome, thank you. All right, moving to the next question comes from Fernando. It says, would you be willing to publicly produce a list of police officers for whom the district attorney's office has evidence of dishonesty, excessive force, or racial bias? And then the second part is, what does your office do when you receive information that a police officer has engaged in criminal activity, such as perjury, assault, or other unlawful conduct? And I think you mentioned, but I maybe just go a little more into detail.
I will. So yeah, Fernando, I think, was anticipating something that G and I spoke about, but to say it unequivocally, if I have any indication from any source, I won't judge the credibility until we get into the investigation, that a cop has committed a crime, and I don't care what it is, perjury, a sex offense, a drug offense, excessive force, it will be investigated and it will be prosecuted if that officer has committed a crime. I'm not proud of this, but I myself have prosecuted police officers. I prosecuted a sergeant in a month-long jury trial down in Cape May County, New Jersey, for assaulting 2 suspects who had their hands cuffed behind their backs. It needed to be done. So that is something that's a no-brainer to me. We will continue to do that, of course. The first part of your question is a little more difficult. I'll say this. We have an ethical obligation to keep track of these officers. If they've been proven to be dishonest or proven to use excessive force in the past, we do keep track of that. And then there's a sliding scale. Some of them we say we will not use them as witnesses ever. Some will say we will use them as witnesses, but when they become a witness, their indiscretion, their prior indiscretion will be made public. And they'll have to defend that on the stand. Others, because it's so far distant in their past, we will disclose it because we have to, but we will fight in court whether that should be used to discredit them. To give you an example, if it's beyond 10 years and they've had 10 years of very good, clean conduct, they shouldn't have to pay for that indiscretion. And then finally, there are some that are just discredited. As for publicizing that list, I don't think that would be fair because there would be no context, Fernando, but we do maintain those names. Jennifer Shorn is my chief of trials. She maintains them. And we have due process hearings for these police officers. We just had a couple the other day. And we do keep internal track and turn that information on a case-by-case basis over to defense attorneys.
Great, thanks. Okay, next question comes from Dan. It says, according to the ACLU, in Bucks County, Black people were arrested 6.7 times more than white people for possession of marijuana in 2018. This is more than the national average of 3.6 times. How do the stats for prosecutions of these arrests by race stack up in comparison? What are you doing to reduce this disparity?
It's a great question, Dan. I don't know where the ACLU got their stats. I would have to examine that. But if that is in fact the case, it's unacceptable and it's terrible and it's wrong and it shouldn't happen. The ratio should be 1 to 1. We are currently examining all of the, this is a huge order to the tune of about 20,000 cases, but we're attempting to examine all of our prior prosecutions from the 2019, 18, and 17 to see if there are any latent racial disparities or overt racial disparities. Somebody asked me, well, why are you doing that? Because what if you find out that you are treating people different according to race? And I said, well, the story's already written. We just need to read it and do something about it. So to me, that's not something I want to duck. Even as we speak right now, 1/5 of my staff is taking racial equity training. It's a day-long training put on by the Peace Center. I go tomorrow. I wish I could report on how it is. I go tomorrow. But I think we got to practice what we preach. And it's never too late to start. If that is in fact the case, Dan, I think that's terrible. And it is not acceptable.
Great. And I think the next question, Matt, I think you can see the questions too. The next one is similar to the previous, but I think just we'll go over it still. It's from Vincent. We've been unable to locate racial statistics for Bucks Correctional. What is the racial disparity in prosecutions and what is your office doing to reduce it? So
just, and I would appreciate it, Jess, if you keep reading them because
yeah, of course.
Up there.
Definitely.
So Vincent, I don't know what the racial makeup at the jail is. I don't have access to that, but to the point I was just making, I am trying in earnest right now to make a determination as to whether there is some disparity, race-based disparity in how we handle the cases, how the police handle the charges, and frankly, how the courts treat people in sentencing. Because if there is the first thing is to figure out if there is a disparity, collect the data. The next thing to do will be to digest it and synthesize it and try to understand something about it so that we can do things better and not have these disparities. I'm working on it. I know that's not acceptable because we can't accept it in any form, but you got to start somewhere, and I'm willing to do that hard work, and we're doing it right now.
Great. So we have a couple questions coming in next from Chanel. The first question is, evidence suggests that both Kim Stringer and Dudley Ulysses had their constitutional rights violated during the tenure of their arrests and jail time. Are you aware of the overwhelming support for having their charges dropped in petition signatures, with Kimberly Stringer having over 9,000 plus signatures in the past couple of weeks, and the newer petition of Dudley Ulysses garnering 320 plus signatures in just 48 hours.
So Chanel, I will say I am aware of both of those cases, of course. I am not aware of the signatures. I appreciate that. I will say, and both of these, I have to be careful, but there is a mental health component to both of their cases, to Douglas Ulysses and Kim Stringer cases. I need to be circumspect a little bit. We have, as a result of some media attention that was brought to light regarding Kim Stringer's case, which I was not aware of until then, we took some affirmative action to get her from the jail and get her into a place where she is better suited and her needs can be better met. As far as dropping the charges, this is what I'll say about this. I believe in equitable justice too. And I can't say that that is beyond the pale. I can't say it's impossible because there have been cases where somebody may be suffering from a mental health issue, and that's the only reason they languish in jail, way beyond any sentence that they would serve. And the buck stops here. And I've said, you know what? We're dismissing their charges because it's just not fair for them to languish when they can't get better being in the jail. The Stringer case did cause me to do an investigation, and I stated my findings on the record at the last prison board meeting, which was 2 Wednesdays ago. And you can get a recording of that meeting. That meeting was recorded. It was public. As far as agreeing right now on the record to drop those charges, Chanel, I think that would be irresponsible because in both of those cases, there are real victims. Real people were hurt. And I need to not just protect Kim Stringer and Mr. Ulysses, I need to protect everybody. And that includes people that were victimized by them as well.
Okay. Next question also from Chanel, and I think you talked a little bit about the mental health component, but it says, what is your opinion on a mental health court, and do you intend to work with the Bucks County Commissioners to begin the process of creating the needed change for mental health reform in the justice system?
The answer is 100% yes. I am committed. I have lent my commitment, my endorsement. I actually myself have a report that I asked for from the Quattrone Center, which is the Penn think tank at Penn Law School that deals with criminal justice issues on this very issue about whether we should have a mental health court. And there is a ton of motivation right now. It's unfortunate that a sentinel event like the Kim Stringer case is what's required, or George Floyd's murder is what's required to get some momentum. But yes, I'm committed, and we will have a mental health court here in Bucks County. Great question, Chanel.
Great. Okay, and again, a little bit again with the mental health topic, do you support the idea of diverting defendants with mental health issues away from the criminal justice system and into treatment and support services in the community? What programs currently exist in your county?
I do support it. I have a favorite saying. It's not a flattering saying, but a favorite saying. To somebody holding a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And what that means is if the police are called to a situation where somebody's in crisis or suffers from mental health issues, oftentimes what ends up happening is an arrest is made. And rather than being diverted into services that person might need, social services, mental health services, that person is diverted to jail. And then they languish or they deteriorate. And that's the opposite of what we want to have happen. I always have to add this caveat that I am responsible for public safety. If this person is committing crimes, then we need to protect the public. And sometimes that means they have to go to jail. But if there is a default, not jail or jail, to me, it's not jail. And you ask what kind of programs we have. We have mobile crisis and mobile engagement services, which occurs down at the district court level for people that have mental health issues, but that have become charged or enmeshed in the criminal justice system. And I work closely, my department does work closely with behavioral and mental health services here at the county level to make sure that that mobile crisis and mobile engagement can get to them at the earliest possible time. But I'll level with you. They're overrun. They're understaffed. There's not enough of them. I think there's 3 teams of 4 people. They're on 24/7. It's a huge county. There's 625,000 people. We need more help, but I'm committed to it.
Definitely. Okay. So then we have 2 questions that are regarding cash bail. So I'm going to read both of them. So the first one is cash bail really necessary? Many people can't come up with the money needed during the pandemic. Parts of New York have eliminated the need for cash bail in response to high prison populations and the likelihood of contracting coronavirus. And then let me just find the other one that is similar. Uh-oh, did I lose it? Give me 1 second. Okay, yeah, and then can you talk a little bit about any efforts being made? Oh, no, that's not it. Sorry, Matt, 1 sec. Okay, I guess just answer that first one. Is cash bail really necessary?
Okay, and just before I do that, shout out to Brian Jetter, who I saw just email. Glad to see you're listening, Brian, paying attention. I love it. Cash bail, it's definitely a hot button topic. I have read mixed reviews about what's going on in New York. I can't comment, I'm not there, but I think that the jury is still out. What I'll say about bail is this: it's designed for only a couple of reasons: to protect the community, to ensure that the person appear, and it's based on the seriousness of the offenses. If bail is being used as punitive in nature, that's being abused, it's being misused. We have bail hearings twice a week, every week in Bucks County. And they went on even during COVID. They were one of the few hearings that continued to occur. And I said, and this shows that if there is a will, there's a way, that we're able to lower the prison population. But if I have to be pinned down on this, I am in favor of cash bail in appropriate cases. I'm also in favor of ROR bail, which is released on your own recognizance in the vast majority of cases. But if the public is at risk, or if the person is a flight risk because they can't appear, or the charges are very serious, I think cash bail is warranted and appropriate.
All right, great. Matt, do you have time? We still have a good amount of questions. Is that okay?
Well, I have a 2 o'clock meeting, but let's keep going.
Right.
I don't like to duck any questions.
No, I know, and they're all really good questions.
Right.
We should have made this a 2-hour one, huh?
Oh my gosh.
So what is your opinion on allowing qualified immunity to continue? How are you working to charge officers who commit crimes whilst on the job, or just in general, so that their crimes do not get swept under the rug, which I think you touched on a couple times throughout the presentation.
So qualified immunity is different. Qualified immunity means that an officer has some protections as long as they are not willfully breaking the law or acting in bad faith. Being a police officer is a very difficult job, especially in today's day and age. They are called for everything, because when you call 911, a cop doesn't have a choice. They have to respond. So if you call them because your cat's stuck in a tree, or because your neighbors are fighting, or because you're having a child dispute with an estranged spouse, the cops have to come. I do think that they are overutilized. But where I guess that's just a larger component of what I'm about to say. Qualified immunity, for people that don't know, means that a cop is protected from suit, from lawsuit, not from criminal prosecution, not ever, but from lawsuit if they act in good faith, but they make a mistake. And I do think they need that protection. Otherwise, they would never get out of their cars. They would never do anything to protect us, because they'd be afraid of getting sued every minute. That's not total immunity. It means that if they act in bad faith, or they act willfully and intentionally against the law, number one, they'll be locked up, but number two, they can be sued. So I am in favor of qualified immunity, as long as people understand what it means.
Great. Okay. Next question is, according to the Death Penalty Information Center, as of 2020, there are 147 people on death row in Pennsylvania. By race, it breaks down to 78 out of the 147 people being Black, 54 white, 13 being Latino, and 2 being Asian. Given how Black people are disproportionately placed on death row, and with the moratorium currently placed on the death penalty in Pennsylvania, what criteria is your office using to determine whether the death penalty will be pursued?
That's a fair question. We decide them on a case-by-case basis, just by way of education. We don't get to pick indiscriminately, oh, this case should get the death penalty and this case shouldn't. They have to first meet a certain express criteria, whether it's the number of victims, whether it's a child victim, whether it's an intentional murder in the course of committing a felony, and it has to be the actual killer. It can't be his accomplice. If it's an intentional murder of a police officer, and there are a few, it's only those worst of the worst cases that can be considered for the death penalty. And to level with you, that's a decision that rests with me. In each case that is eligible, I try to use it very sparingly. I'll say on the record, I have to own this. I have argued for the death penalty, and it has been handed down as a verdict in cases I've argued. But I've argued for it and gotten it in a case with a Hispanic man, a white man, and a Black man. And that's not to say that any of those are great, but I at least want you to understand my basis of experience. And in those cases, 2 of the victims were Black, because I've also read that is the biggest determinant, is the race of the victim. 2 of the victims were Black and 2 of the victims were white. One guy killed actually 3 people, an unborn child, a lady, and a little 4-year-old, and they were Black. So I don't think that it should be indiscriminately applied. And to that point, there are plenty of cases where I have made a determination that even though it qualifies technically under the law, we're not going to seek it. And I think that is the norm rather than the exception. We seek it fairly rarely.
All right, thanks, Matt. I have 2 questions that are similar next. One is from Carol. Is Bucks County making an effort to hire more minorities on our police forces? And then also from Janet, can you talk a little bit about any efforts being made in the county to recruit police officers of color to better represent the demographics being served?
Yes. Yes. So Carol, great question. I think that the police are underrepresented by minorities. I think that the chiefs will tell you that. Chiefs do make efforts to hire minorities, some successfully, some not successfully. But the impetus is on us. I myself right now, my eyes are open. I am making, even though it's costing me money, I am making a concerted effort to hire more people of color. I just think that community deserves to be fairly represented in my office. So that has become a priority for me. And I know that if you talk to, for example, I've used Bensalem as an example. They had a class, I think, of 10 new police officers maybe in the last year or 2, and 5 of them were people of color, which is good. We have a lot of ground to make up. And you can use whatever excuse you want. You can say, well, it's harder to recruit people of color because of the distrust or the qualifications. Whatever, we have to do it. We have an obligation to do a better job with that, Carol. As to how, to give you my example, we just hired a diversity officer, a racial diversity officer here in Bucks County. He got hired like a day or 2 ago. I'm already bugging him to help me hire an ADA of color, because this is how important this is. I agree. We've contacted the Association of, I don't know the name of it, but it is Assistant District Attorneys of Color. There's a national association. And we're contacting them to say, hey, if anybody wants to come to Bucks County, it's use you. So I want you to understand, I agree it's an important issue and we're practicing what we preach. To be continued.
To be continued. Okay, so Matt, I want to ask you before we get to the next question, because I know it's 1:55 and we're getting close to 2. How would you like to, we have about 9 questions left. How would you like to move forward?
Let's keep going.
Okay, you'll let me know when you gotta when you gotta cut it off, okay?
Yeah.
So we have a question from Celia. It says, how is the rapid DNA testing operating around the 39 police departments in Bucks County?
So rapid DNA testing right now is available to all 39 departments, but is only housed in Bensalem. And for those people that don't know what it is, it's an investigative tool where somebody or something can be swabbed for DNA. It's a machine that can give us a DNA profile within 90 minutes. It is highly effective investigative tool. All of the departments in the county have access to it, but right now there's one machine and it's manned 24 hours a day in Bensalem. So if somebody in Quakertown wants to use it, they got to drive the swab down there. It is only used for investigation. We don't lock people up solely based on the results there, but it can be used to confirm or to exonerate, frankly, which is very important. It's better to exonerate somebody in 90 minutes than to lock them up and send the thing to the lab and figure out we got it wrong. So we've also used that rapid DNA. You talked about the Lost Boys of Bucks County. We use that machine to identify the remains of a few of those boys. So it has many uses. Hopefully that answers your question, Celia.
Awesome. And then next question is from Vincent. Have you conducted any research on how many inmates have mental disabilities?
There's a group that meets once a month, Vincent, and they talk about, it's SPMI, sustained, persistent, or serious and persistent mental illness. So yeah, there is a list, and we're a part of this working group. And we try to figure out where can we get them? How can we get them placed? How can we get out of the jail? It's a very active group, and it's something that we're committed to. I recently rehired my old mentor. I call him a special ADA because he's been around a million years. Colin Jenny. He was my former mentor here, who has decades of mental health experience. He was the solicitor for the mental health department. Now he works as an ADA for me, and this is his specialty. Let's try to help these people. Let's try to untangle the knots that they find themselves in.
Great. Okay. Next is from Chanel. Are you still good, Matt?
Yeah, how are we on time, Jess?
We're good. It's
We're good.
we have 7 questions left.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm trying to see if okay, one is not an actual. Oh, to Ron Davis. Ron asked if it will be available online. We will be posting the video following the presentation on Facebook, so that eliminates one question.
If he means the film or not, he might mean the film.
Oh, the film. I'm not sure.
All right. Well,
I'm not sure. All right. Well, we'll keep going and you'll let me know. What's the exact timeline of the use of force policies being developed in Bucks County?
I think it's urgent. I don't know because I'm just a part of the group. It's being led by the president of the association, Ron McPherson, who is the police chief in Upper Southampton. But I know it's being worked on actively. I think in fairness, because we need to be held accountable, check back in with me in a couple weeks or 30 days. And was this Chanel that asked this?
Yes.
Email me and I'll let you know. mdweintraub@buckscounty.org.
Okay, so we have a question from Vincent. Crime Watch deletes all data beyond 6 months back. Where can we access the comprehensive statistics, and can we start reporting the aggregated racial and crime statistics?
So Vincent, obviously I know what Crime Watch is, but I don't know what data you're talking about. As far as the statistics, my recommendation would be to contact Clerk of Courts here in the Justice Center. It's open to the public. The data is free. I don't know how searchable it is, but whatever's on record is public record. I don't even know if you have to come here. You probably could look it up. I obviously am doing this internally. I have all the files, which I don't know if you would need or not. I wish I had a more specific answer for you, Vincent, but my recommendation would be to check the UJS portal, which is a public facing portal where you can look up at least case by case, but I don't think that it gives you the aggregate data you're looking for, and then maybe try to Clerk of Courts, which is here.
Yeah. So Jess, in the
Yeah.
interest of time, can we just do one more question for Matt?
Absolutely. And then maybe we'll try to figure out how to get the rest.
Yes, because those are important, and maybe we can email them to Matt or figure out a way we can get
That's
it
what
to him.
I'm thinking.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll do.
All right.
Can we just knock them all out?
What?
You want to knock?
Yeah.
I'm not
Let's
a quitter. I'm no quitter. Janelle and Vincent, keep them
Okay.
coming.
Okay.
All right, this one comes from Miranda. It says, in regard to the generally high rate of recidivism, specifically among minors, which many carry these legal issues into adulthood, does your office recognize the issue with the current school to prison pipeline structure? Are these efforts being made, are there efforts being made to decriminalize nonviolent offenses committed in schools? Have you or will you be looking to utilize alternative sentencing solutions, such as connecting our children with mental health, substance abuse, and other social work type resources available in our community, rather than labeling these kids as criminals before they've reached adulthood?
Yes.
That was a mouthful, sorry.
I understand the concept of school to prison pipeline. I think that is an overgeneralization. I'm not going to discredit it completely, because obviously a kid that starts at school, if they become labeled as a juvenile delinquent, then that could start to, we talked about the pathways, and that could really start to negatively affect them and they end up in prison. But I will say, especially in Bucks County, we have more diversionary programs than ever. And if it's a juvenile, if it's a minor offense, just so we're talking explicitly here, the first time you commit an offense, you're not even charged. You're diverted to the youth aid panel. You're not even charged criminally. The second time that you're charged with a minor offense as a juvenile, you're charged, but then you get what's called a consent decree, and your record is erased. It's like you never appeared there as long as you're compliant. The third time you commit an offense as a juvenile, you're going to get probation if it's not a violent offense, and so on and so forth. So it is incremental, and the juvenile system is not designed, it's not punitively designed. It's designed to rehabilitate. And the one aspect that I want to talk about expressly is if somebody has a substance use issue, that's at the root of the problem. We need to deal with that first. I don't get credit for the number of people that I put in juvenile justice or in jail. That's not how this works. We want to tailor our justice system to each individual's needs. I'm committed to that. I know we're just talking about this, but I'm naming programs that we do have. And I'll give you one more for you parents out there. If you have a minor in your house that has some substance use disorder, you can actually petition the court to force them to treatment. It's little known, but you can petition the court, and it's free. I'm sorry, guys. It's free. Look on the Bucks County government website, and you'll find that there, and we'll help you with that.
All right, you sure you have time for two more?
Yeah, go.
Okay, so from an anonymous attendee, do you support using mental health professionals as first responders rather than law enforcement officers?
Yes, for the cases where it warrants it. I think that the way it works, the way I understand it, if a 911 call comes in, and I have a tip, we right now have half of our officers are crisis intervention trained, which means that when they come to a scene, they get dispatched, if there's somebody in crisis, they shouldn't immediately be thinking, how can I lock the person up? They should instead be thinking, what resources do we have to offer them? And then that's that mobile engagement, crisis engagement. But to explicitly answer your question, the answer is yes. If we could also have co-responders, I think is the word, and they're doing this in Dauphin County. I just learned this from my colleague there. Somebody that is expert in mental health issues, we might never have to lock these people up in the first place. So that's an unequivocal yes.
Awesome. All right. And then this last one comes from Denise. Will there be a public report with the findings of the research you are presently conducting on racial disparity among arrest and sentencing of people of color?
That's a great question, Denise. I need to gather the information, which is a huge project. I hope to work with the Quattrone Center, which I reported to you about earlier on the mental health issues. And if I can get them to help me digest and synthesize this information, then yeah, I would make my findings public. But that's a lot of steps need to occur. But I believe in transparency and accountability and communication. So that's my intention, yes.
All right, great. So there is one more question, and it just popped up, but I'm wondering, Matt, if you think it would be better if you're comfortable I know you already gave your email address, but maybe put in that in the chat, and then anybody else who might have questions have access to your email.
Just put it in the chat.
Yeah, are you able to do that?
Yeah, yep, I'll do it right now.
And then,
Awesome.
whoever, if people are still having questions moving forward, they can,
Yeah.
So we don't keep you on here, have another appointment.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Jess. And you did a great job with collecting the questions and reading the questions from Matt. So Matt, as we close out, thank you for being a part of this conversation. We want to continue to do work to make our community better, to have better relationships with law enforcement, and stand in the breach, as you say, and work collaboratively on problems that we share as a community. So to close us out, I just want to know, do you think it's possible that Bucks County could be an example to our region and to our country of positive relationships between communities of color and law enforcement working together? Do you think that's possible? Is that a goal that we could achieve, and how?
It's possible. It will require a huge commitment. It will require a lot of hard work. But I do believe in the possibility of Bucks County's exceptionalism. We are exceptional in many, many ways, but this is something that we definitely need to improve. And it's going to start on a grassroots level with people standing in the breach, people like G, people like Jess, people like Vincent, Janelle, Celia, Miranda, Carol, all the people that took the time to pay attention to this conversation. I don't think it's good to duck a question. Look, some of my answers may be unpopular, but you all are responsible for putting me here. So I owe this to you to give it my best effort all the time. And that's what you're going to get. And I think it is a worthy goal, G, and that's what we're going to continue to work towards.
Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you again for being here. Thank you to all the listeners, the questions. You can tell from the questions that people were engaged. They were asking tough and honest questions, and we welcome that and appreciate that. Thank you to all of the staff that's been working on this. And Matt, thank you again for being a part of this important dialogue. We appreciate that, for always having a door open to us to talk to you and to be a resource. We appreciate it.
I hope I get asked back. That was some hard work. I made it. I answered
We
them
went in
all.
the paint, Matt. We did good. We told them we were gonna go hard in the paint, and we did today. So
You did.
Thank you, Matt. Take
All right,
care.
it's my pleasure. Everybody have a great
Thanks,
day.
everyone.
Have a good day.